There's now Gloria Allred, who represented some of Epstein's accusers all the way back in 2019. Gloria, it's good to see you. Just start with the legal sense here. I'm not a lawyer. I'll use what I think is the legal word of actionable. Is any of the things that we see in these documents so far yet actionable, either civilly or criminally?
Well, I haven't read through all of them, so I really can't say, but I will say this. In terms of the criminal that you have just asked about, and I do represent, by the way, 20 of Epstein's victims, and I still represent them. The criminal prosecutors, I have no doubt, the federal prosecutors, especially from New York, who prosecuted Ms. Maxwell, know probably everything that is in whatever has come out and whatever will come out in these pages and pages and pages of documents. They took a deep dive into Epstein when they prosecuted not only Epstein, but also Ms. Maxwell. Of course, Epstein, committed suicide, apparently, or reportedly, when he was being held in custody awaiting trial. So the jury never had a chance to decide if he was guilty or not. Ms. Maxwell, they did decide that, but the prosecutors know all of it and have not charged anyone else. As to Prince Andrew, they made it clear publicly and that they would like to talk to Prince Andrew and ask him many questions. It is indisputable, and Prince Andrew has admitted that he stayed with Jeffrey Epstein in Epstein's New York mansion. And, there are allegations that he traveled to other properties, the New Mexico ranch of Epstein, potentially to Florida. We don't know whether he went to Little St. James Island or not. But he has declined to speak to prosecutors, to Homeland Security, to the FBI. Why? That question is left hanging in the air. We don't know why, but seems to me, if there's nothing to hide, that he would want to answer questions. Why? He was in the New York mansion. There were a lot of young girls running around there. Right. And
you represent 20 of these women, of these victims.
Yes.
And I know I won't ask you to break attorney-client privilege, but I will note that these women are victims. The only person serving prison time is a woman. And there is accusations of an enormous amount of men who have, and I'll use this term, I guess, that I can on family-friendly television, benefited from Jeffrey Epstein's harem, for lack of a better term. Do you know or have heard of things that should be investigated criminally that you feel prosecutors are either slow walking or covering up or not being aggressive about as it relates to other men?
Well, I mean, you earlier mentioned the word affair. Of course, an adult man, if he has sex with an underage girl, is not having an affair. He is committing an act of child sexual abuse. It's against the law. It is a crime. But of course, then the victims would need to testify. Not every victim, Leland, especially those who were underage at the time, is willing to testify. Either it's too painful for them to have to remember what was done to them. They feel ashamed. They feel sometimes maybe it was their fault. They were stupid. They were ashamed. Of course, they weren't stupid. They were victimized. But I'm saying to testify at a public trial takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
And some of them are just not emotionally up to it, and I don't fault them for that. They've been through a lot. Jeffrey Epstein, and I have reviewed many of his emails to some of my clients, and of course I can't disclose what those emails say, but I will say that I see who Jeffrey Epstein really was from his own words. He was controlling. He was manipulative. He had a scheme. He harmed them.
Based on these emails. Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.